Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright friends, so I am bringing you another, well, we won't maybe call this one oddly specific because I feel like it is more common than we know. It usually is within some certain types of books, but I don't think it's quite as specific. But after I put up my cockwarming video last week or a couple weeks ago now, which by the way y'all just went rabid over, which made me so happy. I love when a random kinky recommendation video just like shoots off, like it's my favorite thing ever. But I had someone on that one ask me, because when I did cockwarming I said I wasn't doing books that had knotting in them, because that to me is like a different form of it and not quite like cockwarming, because knotting is like biological. It's something that, well, I mean, is in like a paranormal or a fantasy or a monster romance, as you'll see when we get into these. And it is the situation where after sex is, after they've both released, the, male appendage is stuck in there. There's usually a knot at the base of the member that swells up, locks in place, and it's also a part of a breeding kink usually too, because it is meant biologically in this sense to, lock the penis in there so the seed all stays inside and can't get out. And sometimes that will last for a couple minutes or sometimes it's for hours depending on the type of story that it is. So this is something that I only really noticed in recent years. I didn't realize how, prevalent it was in a lot of different kind of stories. But I mean, when I was looking through the recommendations, I was like, oh wow, I've read quite a few that actually have this and I just didn't think about it. As well as it is pretty much in every like Omegaverse story that you read, and I do have a few of those. Y'all know I'm very hesitant with Omegaverse. It's not usually my jam because when I was first introduced to Omegaverse, it was all reverse harems. Those were the first ones I read, and again, I do have one of those on here as well, but I'm not super into reverse harems. I've shared that multiple times as well. So enough of the caveats to get out of the way, but that's what knotting is. It is after the release has happened, the cock is stuck in there, it's held in place by a knot, and they're stuck together for a certain while. And so this does feel like it's a type of cockwarming, and I'd say it kind of is, except when I did that cockwarming video, as you saw, that was more for people choosing to stay locked together that way, not physically being like forced to be locked together. So in the case of some of these books, it's a forced intimacy that the couple maybe isn't ready for yet, whereas in the cockwarming they are like adding that on to their relationship, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and get started with this. And let's start off with the only one that I actually own. So I was a bit surprised with myself that a few of these are books that I really love, but I actually don't own any of them. I only own one that has knotting in it, which is just crazy to me. But that's actually going to be Viper by Naomi Lucas. Yes, look at this. This is a cover you can buy on Amazon. So this isn't an exclusive cover. If you look up Viper by Naomi Lucas and you look up like special edition, you'll be able to buy this cover, which is gorgeous. I have all of the books with this cover because it's fantastic. But this is about a snake alien basically, and our heroine is with a group of humans who stop on Earth. They are seeing if it is like habitable there now, only to discover that it has been taken over by these half man, half serpent like beings. Well, they don't even know that they're half man. Sorry, that's kind of jumping ahead. But all they have is these very strong biological urges to take the women who are there. So there's a few women that are there with this group of like scientists and soldiers or whatever, and they know that these women are their brides and they want them, and they will do whatever they have to get them. So they are very forceful aliens, and there is some dubious consent that goes into it, but not a lot, because the thing is, they're both like, they're fated mates to each other. And so once the males get a sniff of them, they get super like, that's my woman. Their mating urge gets kicked up. But the women also have that reciprocally. So while it is like a bit against their will that they're drawn to this man, it isn't usually that the man is just, or male, whatever, you know what I mean, is completely like forcing themselves on them, because they're both being biologically drawn to each other. But there is some rougher situations, and it involves like kidnapping the brides to take them with them. And I love it. So yeah, there's a whole series of these. The next one's coming out this year. I can't wait for it. And yeah, highly recommend Viper and the Naga Bride series for you. Okay, then we have Lilan Lark. Now, I just picked one of her books, but I'm pretty sure that all of the books in her, like, what's it called? The bathhouse monsters, they all have knots. You know, like the werewolf one does, the lake monster does, the snake ones do too, I think. The basilisk, like all of those do. But I picked my favorite one in the series, which is the most recent book, which was Hoarded by the Dragon by Lilan Lark. I loved this one so much. So this one involves a half witch, I think she is. This book involves a half witch, I think she is, and a thief, and she breaks into this place to steal something, to steal an artifact, and she's picked the wrong day and the wrong place to do it to, because this mansion is owned by this dragon, and this dragon happens to be going through his heat, so he is horny and angry and wants to fuck, and he's gonna call the like paranormal police on her, but she can tell he's in a heat, so she makes him an offer. She offers to help see him through his heat, because if he's not able to, you know, breed a female during that time, it's extremely painful for them. And so she agrees to let him use her for that, and he will then give her the item that she's there to steal and never see each other again. However, you know, and he agrees to this because a dragon is only supposed to be able to, you know, get their fated mate pregnant. And he's actually already had his fated mate. Tragically, she died many years ago. So that's why he usually sees his heat out and just suffers through the pain, because he's alone now. He's a widower, which is actually like really sad. And I feel like you don't have that in like paranormal books usually, you know? But the very next day, the heroine realizes that she's pregnant. And because this is a magical pregnancy, very soon she becomes very sick because she is pregnant with a reptile. And this, you know, this reptile baby is sucking all of the heat from her body. And so she goes to tell this dragon that she's expecting his child. And he's like, that can't be possible. I can only get my mate pregnant and my mate is dead. And she's like, well, it ain't anybody else's in here. So then this becomes kind of a like cohabitation, because she needs to be around him because he can actually warm her up, and otherwise she's like freezing all the time. And they now live together, and they're planning to raise their baby together. So I loved this. This was actually one of those where it's like there's a one night stand, but then there's a real slow burn after that. And I really liked how it played out with these two getting to know each other and sharing a baby. I love surprise babies like this. I just do. I love it so much. Then there is Desire in His Blood by Zoe Draven. Zoe Draven does have a few that have not like qualities to them. But yeah, this one is a bit like a vampire crossed with a berserker, Highland berserker crossed with a sci-fi book. So this one is an arranged marriage. However, our hero is marrying the daughter of his enemy because he's planning to use her to destroy his enemy, only to discover that the woman he married is actually his fated mate. And he's still planning to use her somehow, but the first moment he gets a taste of her blood, he's like, damn it, I really want to keep this woman. So it's not going to be as easy as he thinks it will be to use her and lose her later on. Zoe Draven writes, so good. I love her story so much. All right, then we have Moon-Blooded Breeding Clinic by C.M. Nescasta. This one is a part of her Cambric Creek series. You can read these out of order, in my opinion. They don't connect a ton. But this one, we have our heroine who wants to have a baby, and she is a single woman at this point. And so she hears from a friend who her and her partner actually used this clinic to get pregnant. And it actually is where like werewolves are pretty like compatible with a lot of different races and creatures and beings and stuff. And so they are used often at this clinic. So it's done kind of the old fashioned way though. You get bred by the werewolf. So that's why it's called and during the like phase of the moon, they're more potent than others. So that's why that's called the moon-blooded breeding clinic. And so these two end up getting matched. You know, she picks him out of a book of who she would want to be her baby daddy. But then when they end up meeting each other beforehand, they have this great connection. And so they actually decide to try and like date each other because they like each other. So they're like, what if something more could actually come of this and not just you impregnating me and then we never see each other again? So that's the scenario for this one. And it does involve a tiny bit of a submissive hero too. Just a little bit. He likes to be told he's a good boy. But it's still some very hot stuff in this one. So highly recommend. All right. Then we do have two that are Omegaverse. Well, I have three that are Omegaverse, I guess. So we'll share those ones. We have two that are fan fictions and then one that is not. So we have All You Want by Lilan Lark. So this was one I actually put off reading for a while because of me not liking Omegaverse. But once I read a few Omegaverse that were MF couples, you know, as I said, I'd only read reverse harems before, or Omegaverse actually, and it wasn't jiving with me. But I had read a few at this point that were MF Omegaverse and I liked them. And Lilan Lark, if you don't recognize that name, that is the author of the fanfic Manacled. And I really wanted to read more stuff of hers. So All You Want is a Hermione fic where when these two go back to Hogwarts for, I believe this is an 8th year fic, Hermione discovers that she is an Omega. And this was something that she was never tested for because she grew up in the Muggle world. So she was never tested to see if she was an Omega. And so she starts to go through her, you know, Omegaverse puberty basically. And now all the alphas at Hogwarts are getting attracted to her. So her and Draco end up making a deal with each other that he will be her fuck buddy and see her through her heats to keep the other alphas off of her. So he will like scent her and then they'll have all the sex that they want to keep everyone else away from her. So, but of course, because it is, you know, because it is the type of story that it is, Hermione doesn't believe that he could like her. You know, he's only fucking her because she's an Omega, and Draco believes she's only fucking him because he's an Alpha and keeping everyone else away from her. So they do kind of get in their own way a little bit with this one. But I really enjoyed this one. It was great. And then I read Mine by Graceful Lioness, and this one is a Sirius and Hermione. And this one begins a little bit the same as the other one, right? We have Hermione discovering that she is an Omega in the beginning, and Sirius happens to be an Alpha. And they kind of all happen to be sharing like Grimmauld Place, right? Because Hermione's parents are off in Australia. That usually happens a lot of times, so we can just get rid of Hermione's parents. They have forgotten about her and live in Australia, you know. And Sirius in this has lived, obviously, and they're all kind of sharing Grimmauld Place. And when she starts to go through her first heat, he becomes rabid and she becomes desperate for him. So that first time she goes through a heat, their friends lock him in one room and her in another room and keep them apart because neither one of them is consenting to this yet. And so they don't want to let them be fucking each other if they haven't consented to each other, which I thought was like nice of their friends, but also super frustrating. So after that heat and how painful it was and just how intense it is, Hermione learns of a potion that she can take that will suppress her heat for a certain amount of time. It won't do it forever, but it'll do it for a few years. And so she agrees to do this because she's like, I don't want to deal with this or be pressured into anything. But then she finds out a few years, because then we skip a few years, and we find out that it's not going to work anymore. It's supposed to work for like 5 or 6 years, and it's only been 3, and it's going to stop. And she has a heat coming very soon. And so she's going to have to find someone to be paired with. And so the mention of Sirius comes back up again, and she's like, well, I wouldn't want to force him into that. And so we do have that kind of thing again where he said where they both think the other one only wants them for their biological parts, not knowing that Sirius has already kind of had a crush on her for a while. But in his mind, he's like, how was I ever supposed to say anything about it before? Because you were my, you're my godson's friend, and you were younger. Like, I couldn't make a move on you, but I have always liked you. Well, not always, but he's liked her for a few years. And Hermione's like, well, you were my friend's godfather. How was I supposed to make a move? So, they're kind of in each other's way. But I really loved this one. And this is a bit of a like shorter one. Whereas like All You Want is a bit longer. So if you want to try a shorter one and you like an age gap and you like Omegaverse, mine could be a really great one for you. Highly recommend. And then we might as well do the other Omegaverse too, which is one that pretty much everyone's going to recommend to you. It's why like I wasn't going to put it in here, but I have read this one, so I thought I would. And that, of course, is Baby and the Late Night Howlers by Catherine Moon. She has a whole like sweet verse series. I've actually only read Baby and the Late Night Howlers. I tried reading one of the other ones, and it just isn't for me. But I know so many people love this, so I don't want to detract anyone from giving it a go. But I believe this one is mixed with kind of some biker situations as well. Or like there's like biker gang, but they're like a pack of, whatever. Anyway, I'm horrible at explaining it, but I have to put this on here just because I know how much everyone else loves it. And it's the only like reverse harem that I'm sharing on here. Because again, that's not my thing, but it is for some people. So who am I to get in the way of it, right? All right. Then we have The Tyrant Alpha's Rejected Mate by Kate C. Wells. This one feels a little more straightforwardly like a werewolf paranormal romance, but our heroine is actually a crippled latent wolf who is working for this pack. She's at like the lowest of the low of it. And then one day her wolf comes out and wants to claim the alpha. And now the alpha, he is a bit like offended by this, that the weakest wolf in the pack would dare to try to be his mate. But the thing that, and this does get a little frustrating in this series at different times, is like their wolf is never wrong, okay? The wolf is never wrong, and the wolf says, that's my mate. And who are the outer shells, the humans, to decide that their wolves don't know best, right? They don't know everything. But this whole series is a rejected mate series. So, we have her recognizing it's him. He recognizes it's her. He shuns her because he's like, there's no way she could be mine. And so now she's like, well, I can't be around and watch you sleep with other women, and I can't watch it. And so she kind of goes into a self-imposed like exile, and his wolf gives him no rest for doing that. So that is something about this series that most people like, is that the men usually have to grovel quite severely to get their women back because of that rejection at the front end of it. And yeah, there are knots involved. This one involves them making their nests and wanting to make it just perfect, and then being like bred in their nest. So a lot of people will think it's pretty hot. So this book wasn't my favorite. The third book was actually my favorite, The Lone Wolf's Rejected Mate, because for me, that wolf has a good reason why he rejects his mate, whereas the other ones, I feel like it's a bit tougher to see their side, like why they are. So, but anyway, thought I would share this series. A lot of people love this one. Then there is Luxuria by Colette Rhodes. This one is, I believe it's like a monster slayer, and then like a monster, they are put in an arranged marriage. And there are knots involved in this one, but the heroine ends up going to live with her new husband, and she's worried that he's going to kill her. Now, these monsters, they feed off of fear, but something that ends up happening is that our heroine isn't afraid of this monster. She's actually extremely turned on by him. But one of the first times like he approaches her to have sex, she's super turned on. But her being turned on is feeding him. Right? Because what he doesn't know is not only does fear feed them, but the arousal of your fated mate will also feed you. But he doesn't know that. He's never been around that before. So when he approaches her for them to consummate, she's super horny for her monster. Okay, she's had fantasies of monster. And so, which has always been a guilty secret of hers, because she, you know, is supposed to slay these, I'm just calling them monsters in the generic term, like they have a name in here, whatever. But she's been told she's supposed to slaughter them, but she doesn't want to. So that's always been a shame of hers. So she isn't ready to just admit right away that she's like horny for this monster. So when he, you know, feels that energy coming to him as food, he's like, oh, she's terrified. I'm not going to rape my new wife. So then he like leaves, and now she's very frustrated because she thought she was finally going to get her sexual desire of being with this monster, and then he leaves. So it does take them a while to get on the same page, because every time he will get her in like a submissive position, she's just super turned on. He feels that feeling, thinks that she's afraid, and then he backs off because he's like, I don't want to force her. So it takes them a while before they realize what's going on, and then all holds are off, you know. And then the last one I want to mention is actually Untamed Hunger by Tiffany Roberts. This one is actually a pregnant single mom and a sci-fi character. And she, in the beginning of this, is actually being held captive. She is a human slave, and she's a pregnant one. So the person holding her can't wait to do experiments on a pregnant female because he's fucked up. And our hero in this one, he is like going undercover, and he sees this woman who's being sold, and so he pretends to buy her because he's planning to let her go. But the heroine doesn't know that. So when he buys her and he's going to free her, she's like, I don't trust him. She gets away from him because she's actually a like, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called, but she's used to taking care of herself. So she fights him and gets away, but now she's on the run from the people who'd captured her before, and he has to try to rescue her from them before she gets caught again. So yeah, in this one, she's pregnant, and there's some great scenes in here. There's a little bit of lactation kink in this one. There's some, it's not his baby in this one, and I just adore this couple so much, especially if you do read from the beginning of this series. Like, you're so ready for this hero to get his HEA by the time he gets it, and the heroine, Shay, is just fantastic. So, and there's a knot involved because that's what these recs are. So there you go. Those are some recommendations where they're not cockwarming, but there is a knot involved where they stay connected for a certain amount of time. And yeah, I hope you enjoy these. I have links to all of the books I mentioned down below. Please check that out. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, check out the different ways I have below how you can support me here, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.